today our topic is probably something that is interesting, is buy versus build versus open source. This topic is, if you Google for this topic, you would probably find millions of articles in internet that in Google that would be representing different sites. We have a group of fantastic speakers here that could be probably biased towards certain models, but will be sharing their opinion. So we have Manish Diwaan, who is the Managing Director of Asian Financial Innovation Network, AFIN. AFIN was set up with the mission to facilitate innovation and cooperation between financial institutions and fintech in an effort to digitally transform the banking and financial sectors across Asian region and beyond to ultimate the drive financial inclusion. It brings together financial industry participants to discover, design, deploy innovative digital solutions with a collaborative ecosystem. We have Gabriel Engel from Brazil. Gabriel is a founder and CEO at RocketChat. RocketChat is a very popular open source communication platform used by companies and individuals from a variety of sectors, including financial, education, government, and public services. RocketChat platform has a marketplace which is enabling users to build, browse, and download apps on RocketChat newest app ecosystem. It allows an easy customization and extension of the platform. We have Dima Gutzeit, founder and CEO at LeapXpert. LeapXpert is a B2C communication platform using which companies can send text, voice, and file messages to their clients. WhatsApp, WeChat, Telegram, Line, and other messengers. LeapXpert provides a compliant communication and collaboration channel for financial institutions and their customers. I hope I covered the most important parts. Guys, please feel free to add if you see something. Maybe starting from Manish. Manish, would you like to add something?
No, thanks, Alex, and thanks Team AMTD for giving me the opportunity to represent Apex and AFIN here today. And as Alex put up in his opening remarks, we run APEXplatform.com, which is essentially a collaboration platform for financial institutions and fintechs, not just limited to Asian region, but globally now, to come together and demystify what is called as digital transformation, collaboration, etc., and all the fancy words in a much more simpler way, without the worry of creating your own infrastructure, getting your own data sets, doing the whole discovery part. All three of them put together, our research tells, is at least 8 to 12 month process to reach a POC phase for a financial institution, and that's just one POC, and that's precisely the reason why, if you talk to any of the mid-size or mid to large-size financial institutions, they will talk about we do 4 or 5 POCs in a year, and that's the problem that we are trying to solve, to bring it down to 4 to 5 in a month, and that's the core objective, and also to help support the bottom of the pyramid institutions as well, because they clearly lack resources to keep up with the pace of technology changes in the world of financial services. How do we help and support them? And we are happy that AMTD, as part of the Apex organization, as first corporate board members, is helping us do that.
Thank you, Manish. Gabriel, what is RocketChat?
Yeah, I think you did a great job describing it. But our RocketChat is we call a complete messaging and collaboration platform that aims to bring together into the same solution both the B2C communication, all this omni-channel side of things, so the organization can talk to their customers in whatever platform they are. But we believe that we also should enable the same platform, the collaboration internal part, right? So all the same features that you might expect from Slack or Microsoft Teams, where you can create those internal groups and private messages. And in a way, the differentiation is anyone into the organization can then talk to anyone outside the organization. Anyone can be pulled into a conversation for customer, or can be part of a group of a conversation of customers. And we also have then a federation protocol, so different organizations can also create channels cross company. And then we see this starting to happen a lot in Europe and some in US. So I think it's an open source engine for messaging, then tries to bring all your external and internal communications into one place.
Thank you, Gabriel. Dima, I remember the LeapXpert solution is one of the most elegant compliant communication tools that I ever seen. So what is new in your area?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for having me. So, as you mentioned, we are the maker of what we call the federated messaging orchestration platform. Is a compliance-focused, data ownership-focused platform specializing in B2C communication, allowing individual professionals from a company to communicate externally over any communication channel. What's new in our space? We see a very good traction of our product in some of the global banks, and not only banks. And it's been a wonderful year for us.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dima. Probably again coming back to the buy versus build with open source, and my first question would be for Manish. Manish, do you think is it really just buy versus build, or this topic is way more complex?
Yes, I would tend to agree that it is a little bit more complex than a simple buy versus build decision. As an organization, first there has to be the willingness to move and change. And that's the first critical step that needs to be taken. Many times, especially in if you talk about, the mid-size institutions and so on and so forth, it's purely a decision on how good it looks on an Excel sheet, right? And unless it looks good on an Excel sheet and makes revenue and makes business sense, we don't really encourage ideas beyond that, right? And that's something that is what we are trying to solve for by saying that you don't really need to look at Excel sheets and don't have to worry about the buy and build. The first step that you need to take is, have the willingness to transform and take that first step, and we are willing to help you out, handhold that process for you, and then once you identify that these are the three things that I want to do, then go on the decision to build or buy. And in today's world, there are so many good options available for you to actually collaborate, which I think would be the qualifying word here, that building and buying is a completely different scope altogether. I think collaboration is what life is all about, and it's moving towards that. And we are happy that we are playing a small bit role in doing that.
Thank you, Manish. I think you rightly touched the point of the question that you have to ask yourself, and that's maybe the question for Gabriel. Gabriel, what do you think, if you are making a choice, what are the probably two, three questions that you would ask before you are making your decision and choosing the approach?
Between buy versus build?
Buy versus build versus open source.
So I think it really, it's a matter of understanding that open source, I guess, sometimes is in the middle between this buy versus build, right? Because open source doesn't mean that you're gonna have all the solution for free. There's, like ours, there's a commercial version of the application, would bring some more features and bring more scalability and support. But it allows, what the open source does, in my opinion, and what our customers have seen, is the much greater flexibility to not depend on the roadmap of the vendor, what the vendor has built as functions. So rather than just trying to influence the roadmap of what the company is doing. If you see a product that is open source, does almost everything that you want, but sometimes is missing a key features, there is this opportunity to build on top of the open source. So it's all, so you buy the support, you buy the consulting to help you do it properly, and then you can build the components that are missing. So I think the business model of most open source companies today, it's on this premise that maybe you don't have to make a choice between buy versus build between open source, but open source becomes a little bit of this hybrid mode where you can get the best of each offer, right? So you have an open source, so you can view the source code, you can buy the support that you need, you can buy this enterprise version engine from that specific product, and you can build the components that maybe are too specific to your use case, to your business case. You can do a little bit of white labeling, you can do a lot of more stuff that maybe a closed source platform would not allow you to do properly.
I see. Dima, you are dealing with the financial institutions and you are selling your solution to the financial. What are they asking when you're pitching to them?
Oh, it's a very good question. So first of all, I think every company and financial institution, especially when they're faced with a question of buying versus building, it should boil down to one question: is what we're trying to build or to buy is a core to our business, right? If it's core to our business, of course, company needs to build to be in complete control and not relying on anything. If it's something in the peripherals, let's say a communication platform, then most likely buying will be the answer. And the reason is if you look on the Excel sheet, the reason is clear, right? The total cost of ownership, of course, is a big part of it. Because if you're looking on a hybrid model or building an in-house on any type of platform, then you're most likely looking on a development team of 20 people, and let's say they're all in Singapore, so you're looking at roughly 3 million annual cost for salaries and so on, right? And versus if you buy the same thing, it most likely will be cheaper, right? So first of all, cost I think is the major driver in any company, and then of course all this kind of security, stability, which is some open source projects are known for not having, and specific requirements for financial institutions when it comes to privacy, security, integrations with other systems inside the bank and so on. So it's many different questions and only a few right answers, I would say.
Thank you, Dim. Gabriel, do you think, and again, from you are dealing with, you're providing the open source software to the companies. Do you think that the industry balance, especially in financial industry, shifted recently from buy to versus to open source and build?
What I was saying is that I might have a slightly biased perception of the market, given that a lot of the customers, when they are contacting us, is because they are going through this shift, right? So for full disclosure, obviously, we've seen a lot of organizations on the financial sector that are looking into solutions where they can have greater control over the feature set, the roadmap, that they can customize more, and they're liking this approach of building on top of an open source solution when they find an open source solution that is already mature, stable, and have maybe 90% of the features that they're looking for, right? So they don't want to build the whole stack, or they don't want to get an open source solution that is too unproven and unstable, and then have to build the 50% that is missing. But when they find something, and we are happy that that has been happening more and more with our product in different regions, that they usually have to build this very last components, sometimes some different rules on how they distribute the communications between their own internal team. Sometimes they have to build different rules for their ethical wall inside the organization, who can talk to who. Sometimes they have different file storage with different, so sometimes the little things that they have to plug in, but the whole communication infrastructure, storaging, privacy, encryption, all the stuff they can get from the product. So it's a shift that we've seen, and not just on the financial sector. We have starting to see this even on the U.S. military. Like we're starting to have more and more customers into the U.S. government and the military because they want to have this ownership and privacy. And so I'm biased to say that as there is a little bit of a nationalism going on in the world, and that's also translating to a digital nationalism. More and more countries and more laws about putting the data of the people of that country in that country, seeing who has access to that data, how it's working, where it is stored. We've seen a growing interest in products where people can open the box and see what is in the box and run the box for themselves. So.
Yeah, we all can see that the world is growing the borders in internet, and so probably the financial sector is one of the first in that process. When we are talking, and this is probably the for Manish because he's involved into the ecosystem. Manish, how the cloud technology is affecting the decision-making process right now, or is it not affecting? What do you think?
So that's the great divide, I guess, right? There are few who have actually embraced cloud as a very viable go-to option, and there are lots who still struggle with regulatory requirements, regulatory framework in specific geographies. And a lot of times the struggle is purely because somebody somewhere who checked with the regulator 2 years back on something comes back from the team and says, no, you cannot do it on the cloud, right? And that's a lot many times that we have seen. But yes, cloud is kind of democratizing the whole piece altogether, right? People have access, they can test and try, they can deploy very, very quickly without having to worry about creating this huge infrastructure, which is a big problem, big concern for a lot of smaller financial institutions on going about doing things. It adds a lot to the overall bill of doing something, and cloud is supporting that their first steps towards digital transformation, towards digitization, towards providing competitive services to their communities and the smaller geographies that they cater to. So cloud is the great leveler, so to speak. And Apex itself, we are hosted completely on the cloud. Our solutions are completely based out of cloud. We are API exchange, and by definition, we provide APIs and the sandbox, which is hosted on cloud for people to come and try and test before they make the buy or the build decision. Mostly it is the buy decision or the collaborate decision.
I see. Dima, how is the cloud helping you or to sell the solutions or not?
Yeah, so two parts. So first of all, I would argue against what Manish is saying, because deploying on the cloud, it doesn't mean it will be faster deployment, right? Because all the red tapes and all the processes that large banks has around clouds, it can make it in some cases as slow as on premises. Now, but of course, what it does make, it makes everything more predictable, right? There are only a few clouds in the world, like 4 big ones, and once you support all of them, then deployment in a bank, adapting each one of them is becoming much easier, right? Everything is standard, and there are much less surprises than in an on-prem solution. So definitely, cloud maturity of different banks is definitely helping us, and we. In the last 2 years, we see a clear shift when it comes to even this cloud native mindset. If 2 years ago, everybody were like, we on premises and we're thinking about cloud, right now, most of the banks are already on the cloud or in a process of. So fast forward 1 year, it will be most of the banks will be already on some sort of a private cloud.
Gabriel, you have quite extensive and quite big group of customers, and probably that are probably using the cloud and on-premise. What is more common? What is more often in the open source world, and especially in your world?
Well, cloud is the most common, but it's for us. Most of our customers are running on private clouds. Even like I mentioned, I think one of the highest probably the requirements for privacy is from, I would say, the U.S. Navy, and they run on Azure, right? So they have a private servers, a private deployment on Azure, and we know other banks that we talk to, they sometimes they have their private servers on AWS or when we have customers then outside like the Europe and America. In Russia, then they have their local cloud providers, right? But I think what is happening and we see happening, it's a lot of those organizations looking to move to the cloud, but then starting to choose sometimes local providers of that cloud, someone that will keep that information inside that specific country. And then start to have like customers in Saudi Arabia who they want cloud, a SaaS version of RocketChat, a cloud version of RocketChat. So then we have a partner in Saudi Arabia that can run those instances for those customers in Saudi Arabia. And then I think we strike a balance between the end customer can have a SaaS experience where everything is taken care of for them, but also it's on a cloud, on a region that they trust, and from a supplier that they already built a relationship and trust. So yes, we're seeing more and more of kind of a proliferation of multiple clouds in different regions for people those companies to be using.
I understand. Maybe a little bit provocative question to Dima, but Dima, why should I buy something if I can build or use open source solution?
Of course, again, going back to the cost. So in average, I would say that building something is much more expensive than buying. Second, faster and predictable release cycles, right? Open source community being open source community have its own weathers, right? It's things are up and down. While with a vendor, you get what you pay for. Time to market, right? If you have an urgent problem to solve, then it's much faster to find a vendor and buy a proven solution than building something or adapting an open source project and building on top. Of course, you're also getting something that we call best of breed or your collective intelligence. So vendor usually is very focused on what they do. They see the industry across the globe, and they create a solution that probably fits the needs of different financial institutions, and vendors also selling a future proofing normally, right? So your product evolves with a much more rapid speed than open source, because open source need to cater for everybody, and sometimes it's hard, while vendors are more focused and can move faster.
I see. Gabriel, if I'm choosing the open source solution, what should I consider? Because in a lot of cases, it's a startup usually, and probably there are a lot of questions. And what are the most important points to consider when I'm choosing that?
I think one of the most important things to consider when choosing the risks. If Dima said about some projects are totally true. Like some projects, if you just choose a project where there's no commercial entity or a steward of that project behind the project, you really might be running into a risk of that project not existing on the long term, or not having the right amount of resources being put into building the project. So I think it would be a mistake if people put all the open source projects in the same basket, because open source sometimes is more of a strategy for innovation and distribution for companies. And I bet a lot of companies already use MongoDB, which is like and it's an open source project, but I think it's a multi-billion-dollar open capital company, or Elasticsearch, which is like a common database used in many infrastructures, or GitLab, or again Linux from Red Hat, and those are all, or Nginx for your servers. Those are all healthy open source projects which manage to create an entity which has a commercial purpose, and we'll be able to keep investing and get a good relationship with the customers, and use the open source as a strategy for innovation and for expediting the development of the product. So I think for me, the first thing for people to look at is, who is the steward of that project? Is it a company? Is it a commercial and viable and maybe thriving company behind, and a community? So that's what for me makes a lot of the difference between when choosing the projects.
I understand. Manish, your day-to-day, you are building the ecosystem, and you're creating the ecosystem for both sides, build and buy. What is the tendency there? What do you see from your perspective? Do you see a lot of startups that are providing the buy solutions for the big companies?
It's kind of a mixed bag. See, because like Dima and Gabriel mentioned, safety, security of the solution that is being adopted in an institution is of prime importance for everybody, right? Nobody wants to. There is no if and but about that part, right? And it all boils down to this: once you do a proof of concept successfully on Apex, the commercial conversation moves out of Apex per se, right? Apex by definition is an experimentation platform. We don't involve ourselves in those commercial conversations, but yes, it's purely driven from the fact that what is the organization thought process around things is, and normally it would come down to how many deployments have you done in the past? I like your solution, I've tested it, it works fine, but end of the day, what is your roadmap? How is it looking like 2 years down the line? How is it looking like from 1 million customers to 10 million customers? What is the support structure? Who's backing you up? What kind of investors do you have? We actually go ahead, and when we onboard a fintech onto the Apex platform, they have to answer some list of some 40-50 questions to us, and that essentially covers the depth and the width of that particular fintech, right? No matter how big or small that you are, because we believe, and we know from our conversation with financial institution, everybody wants to test and try. That is fine, but that's only testing. When you actually move to business, you do need to know a little bit more about that particular organization. Where are they headed? How are they going to support? What kind of roadmap do they have? Where are they looking themselves 5 years down the line? Because it's not a small decision to, for example, change your customer onboarding process, or change your SME lending process, or customer journey on that front, right? So everybody wants to be very, very clear on what kind of organization that you are dealing with.
Yeah, Manish, you're touching very, very important point and very interesting point. Usually when I build my software, I design the support model for that. I understand, I have the source code, and understand everything. But probably this is the question for Dima. How you are organizing your support model when you are selling your software, when the company that already has a support structure buying the software from you?
Yeah, so there are different types of engagement, depending how hands-on the bank wants to be when it comes to operation. Sometimes we provide level 2 and level 3 support, again, depending on the maturity of cloud or not operational team in the bank and different aspects. Sometimes we even provide help desk services if there is a need. So our platform is very flexible to address the needs when it comes to operation of banks of different sizes. But what's true, the operation model and the operation work itself, it's a very big additional difference between build and buy, right? If you as a bank, you can operate software which is not related to your core business, then you can do it. But not many banks in the world are built for this.
But in a lot of cases, as I understand, you are not providing the source code for your applications. In a lot of cases, we cannot understand how it works sometimes. So how you convince your buyers that this is probably something that they need?
Yeah, first of all, we are always there for our customers, right? So 24/7 support, follow the sun around the world is there. Second, the alternative to source code is a very good level of documentation that explains architecture, explains the platform, and explains how to operate it. Indeed, we are not showing our source code, but we are not shy about our architecture, and we're providing very in-depth documentation that covers every aspect of our platform.
Makes sense. Gabriel, talking about the source code, talking about the development, what would be the requirements for the engineering team that would be coming to you and taking your solution as a foundation for their system? What should you expect from engineering team?
We try to make, and over the years as the platform has matured, we try to make some decisions and try to make the life of these engineers easier. And I think we have been doing great progress on that. What I mean is, we decided to build the whole platform in one single language. So we use Node.js and JavaScript all the way from the mobile apps with React Native to the web apps with React, to the backend in Node.js, and the database with MongoDB. So trying to make a very elegant stack for people to manage. And then using containers and now microservices structure, so for scalability, which also then it's a little bit for a knowledge that people, than those engineers need to have. And we also been working really hard on a level of abstraction, trying to decouple the customization that those companies need to do from touching the source code of the product itself. So what they need then to learn is that we have a whole new app engine that we call, that is able to install those customizations on the platform and then change behaviors and change components and UI components in every level. So I think what I'm expecting from the teams is they need to learn, know JavaScript and Node.js and all those best practices and promises and the new dynamics of the language. MongoDB as a database, and also our apps engine, so they understand the best place to make those changes and understand the whole concept of those plugins that we built. And sometimes what they need to look on the source code is, and that's what is exciting for us, maybe the apps engine is missing a feature or is missing an API that will allow them to do an extra configuration, extra customization. So what they can do is they can work on building that API that will allow them to change the behavior. Then they can contribute back that change to the platform, so the platform grows ever more flexible, and then they can build their customization on the outer layer, like on this app engine layer. At this point, they don't have to keep refactoring or always merging their change to the product it's evolving. They can also then install new versions of the product, and all their apps will be automatically applied every time the server is restarted. So it's maybe not sure if the question was supposed to be that technical, but that's kind of like what we are teaching.
No, it is absolutely fine. Thank you very much. Thank you. Dima, is it true that I don't really need an expensive engineering team if I'm buying the solution? Can I save the money there? Can I just avoid that?
Yes. So going back to Gabriel's explanation of what are the requirements of people operating the platform, I mean, it sounds too much. It sounds like dev and ops and all together. Now, when it comes to operation of vendor-based solutions, they usually gear towards operational efficiency and ease. For example, our platform is deployed on top of Kubernetes, which is a standard component when it comes to security, access, scalability, and so on. Integrations with a centralized logging system and alerting system. So the operation itself becomes easy, transparent, and then if there's a need, there's a proper escalation path to get help. So the knowledge level of engineers, of operation people, they need to understand the product a little bit, and they need to watch very extensive dashboards and see the metrics. And if something goes wrong, then they escalate it to other support levels.
I understand. Manish, what do you think? How to avoid bias? What if someone is expressing an initial expectation or preference upfront before choosing this approach?
It's not a simple question to answer. Everybody has their own biases, right? Let's look at it like this. I think Dima also touched upon it briefly, that the shift to, for example, cloud, for example, right, is very, very recent, right? And most of the tech teams come from the old school still, especially in the financial institution environment, right? So they have a certain bias, perhaps at times, which is fair, happens. And most of the fintechs are pretty new on the block, so to speak, right? If you leave apart, the few established ones and the big ones who have taken and have tasted success over the last few years. And also, I think one of the important parts, which very critical role that plays, is the kind of resources that are required. If you leave apart the top 10-15% of the financial institutions across any geography, I'm fairly confident the rest of them do not have the right resources, right? Because resources come at a price, at a cost, right? And that essentially defines the buying versus building decision, or any other decision for that matter, right? Whether I would actually launch a certain service or not, forget buying or building a service, whether I would actually want to enter that specific domain or not is also defined by whether I have the resources to deal with it or not, right? So yes, your bias will come into play, and mostly that bias incidentally is a decision purely driven by whether I have the resources to do that. And that resourcing could be because of financial, could be monetary, could be other business, high business impact decisions that need to be taken.
I understand. Yeah, bias is definitely a challenge very often. But what are the key challenges? For example, for Gabriel. Gabriel, what are the key challenges that you are facing when you are providing your solution to the financial institutions and the big organizations?
Yeah, and I guess just a clarification on the previous answer. I answer those requirements, not just what a person needs to run RocketChat, right? It's also built in Kubernetes and containers and out of the box. If you just run it, we have a version working, and then we have small companies running it without any technical team, or even have a SaaS offering. Those are the requirements if you want to customize and build components on top and change the behavior of the system. For us right now, the biggest challenge is to actually help companies understand the full scope of the solution, because we've seen communication as this like 3 tiers, like customer facing, team collaboration, and partners and cross-company communication. And the fact that the system does those 3 things, sometimes it becomes hard for us to explain, or getting a project where it doesn't lose the focus a little bit. And then you have customers have done, sometimes they come in because of one of the solutions, and then over time they learn that they can use the same tool to do the others. But when you do a lot of things, it's harder to explain how you can do each of those things really well and have a proper project to do those things. So it's more a challenge of us as an organization learning and having a specific team to work on each area separately, and then rather than trying to work it all together. But from a sales perspective, the main challenge usually is sometimes we try to make something that is very easy to deploy in all the clouds that we face, and trying to do the interoperability with all the SMS or like Twilios of this world, all the vendors of this connectivity services into other networks, and making the system work on-prem on all these different scenarios. Obviously, Kubernetes and containers help us a lot. But even then, sometimes you have to teach companies on how to run a Kubernetes infrastructure or how to run containers. So we found some customers. For instance, we have a big customer in Japan. It's not even a financial sector. I think the financial sector might be ahead of the others on that. But it's a power supplier in Japan, and they said like, we don't have containerized infrastructure at all. And then we had actually to do a pitch for them to explain the benefits of going to a pure VMware infrastructure and start introducing containers into their infrastructure. So sometimes this has been a little bit of a challenge, but they're coming to the bright side of the force gradually.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you. We have 5 minutes left, and I would probably need from each of you an advice. What do maybe and what not to do when I'm making my decision to buy, build, or open source. Maybe we're starting from Dima.
Oh, Alex, your core is engineering. So I think when making this decision is trying to think on the overall company perspective and not only from the engineering perspective, because being engineer, myself is also engineer, is always a build, right? It's not even a question, right? So the question you need to ask yourself is it what I need. First of all, how immediate this need is. One. Second, is it part of my core business? If it's my core business, definitely build, own it, because you need to have this flexibility and control. If it's not part of your core business, if it's a supporting platform, just buy it, right? Don't waste your core efforts on something which doesn't bring you value. Right? Just use a proven solution. So those are kind of two aspects, I would say.
Gabriel, an advice from open source community.
Yeah, I think I agree with Dima in his remarks. Building, I would just say that sometimes building from scratch, then it can be also a big waste, considering there's so many open source solutions that can serve as a starting point. And in some cases, like I like to believe that ours is, it's more than a starting point. It's a full-fledged, battle-tested solution that can the layer that he allows you to build is only on the very last part of the customization, and then can give you the right balance of flexibility between fast go-to-market, because you have something that works out of the box, but also give you this long time possibility of build a competitive advantage of customizing in a way that fits your organization, or you can build some specific feature that might give you this edge of competitiveness. So, but also really look for a vendor if you're buying or even getting from open source. The healthy of your supplier is very important, and in both cases, right? Because on closed source, if the vendors disappear, and the product is dead. On open source, then at least you have the source code, and sometimes the people fork and have a lifespan that goes beyond the organization maintaining it, but we will lose the momentum nevertheless. So the healthy of the supplier is always important in both cases.
Manish, what would be your advice?
Step 1, log on to apexplatform.com, create your profile, try out the APIs of all the fantastic service providers we have on board, and then make a decision of which one you want to partner with, buy or build, whichever way.
Perfect. I really appreciate your time, gentlemen, and thank you very much for the advices and your thoughts. I think there is no one way to look at the problem, so we always have to have a comprehensive way to look at that. Sometimes you buy, sometimes you build, sometimes you just go to the APX and play with the APIs that they have there. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.